Well, welcome back everyone to the fourth part of our series on having great conversations. And we've talked about different elements of conversations, and we've given you a few tips on how to elevate your conversations, asking great questions, checking your assumptions, and being curious. But we all know sometimes we avoid conversations and those difficult conversations. Darren, you talk about complex conversations, and I love the way you frame complex conversations, because sometimes when you think about difficult conversations, there's a reluctance for us to engage. But when you think about complex conversations, it's a different perspective. And I'm really, really curious how you coach people through this. So Darren, take us through it.
Thanks, Andre. Yeah, absolutely. I think that people who are able to effectively manage crucial conversations or difficult conversations is a really important skill set. And it is something that all of us as leaders and wanting to be better leaders should be working on and practicing. But often the reason they end up as difficult or needing to be crucial in the first place is because they're a symptom of poor setup of the conversation in the first place, and or a symptom of poor alignment within an organization, or unclear communication, or any number of things. But they're very much often downstream, if you will, right? If we've got the source of information, let's say up here, and way down here is where the conversation is occurring, is there's lots of things that can be done further upstream to help this to be a more effective and successful conversation. And that's what I refer to as a complex conversation. It's more than what meets the eye, right? It's more than what's going to happen in the meeting room that's been booked from 1 to 1:30 on Tuesday, right? It's this whole ecosystem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I'd love to know, what are some of the things we can do upstream?
Excellent question. Speaking of questions from our last session, is where it starts is really being clear, what's your outcome with this conversation? Like overall, not just that you get through it okay, but what is really the outcome of this conversation or this dialogue that you're having with this person? As an example, to give an example, is someone I started working with recently, and they had just taken over a team and they were going to have a difficult conversation. So we started talking through what it was. And as we went through it, what the difficult part of the conversation was is they're not sure what was going to happen with this person's role over time. And so he was going through, how explicit should I be with them about that? And it was kind of like, hey, let's take a step back. And we started going around. All of a sudden, there was probably, at least 3, maybe 4 different stakeholders that would have some sort of impact on whatever this ultimate decision is. So it was kind of like, when we don't need to have that difficult conversation yet. We might not ever need to, but maybe we will. But the complexity is that we need to get some alignment first. Because if you have the conversation with them and give this person one message, and then they talk to someone else 2 days from now and they get another message from that person that's conflicting that or not clear, now guess what? You have a really difficult conversation to have. But if you step back and make sure there's alignment, you understand, use our questions model, think questions, and understand their perception of the role. You understand what this other group is looking for. You get better understanding what you're looking for. All of a sudden, you can get this alignment before you need to have that conversation. And so it reduces the complexity. It reduces the likelihood of it having to be difficult, or at the very least, that when you're having, if it is a difficult conversation, you're actually dealing with real issues and not perceptions that may or may not be accurate. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And it kind of reminds me, Darren, of the thing you introduced us to a few episodes back when you talked about thinking broad versus thinking narrow, having a wide angle lens. And I think in these difficult or complex situations is a great example of stepping back and having a wide angle lens, if you like, because sometimes we get so caught up in the weeds that that's where the complexity happens. Standing back, like you talked about the stakeholders asking the questions, pause and reflect. Yeah, I get it. Makes a lot of sense.
Great example of that. And that's exactly far too often when we have a difficult conversation to have, the focus becomes on that conversation and the anxiety or the nervousness or, what might this mean, as opposed to what's the outcome we're driving for. And that, I think, is a really important question. What is the outcome we want to achieve with this? Not just the message we want to deliver. Or what do we need to think about? What do we want come the end of this interaction or this overall process with this person? Because that helps us to then or step back and go wide. Oh, maybe I need some information from here. Maybe I need some information from this group. Maybe I need to do a little deep dive here. But it helps us to make much more informed decisions about that conversation, and therefore increases the likelihood of it being successful.
Okay, so here's another question for you. So
Okay.
for people watching this, what might be 2 or 3 tips, suggestions about how they should be thinking and approaching these complex conversations?
Absolutely. Again, great question. Number one, just I always say, outcome. You've got a situation that you want to resolve, let's say, looking at it as the situation as opposed to just a conversation. So what's the outcome that you're driving to achieve? Stepping back and going, what are the factors? What's the information that I need that will help me to achieve that outcome? And then put a plan in place. So outcome, data, plan, right? And literally that simple, but it can often be complex, being that what it is.
Fantastic. And I think more and more leaders should be pausing and listening about exactly that, right? Is to sit back, pause, plan, reflect before jumping in. So,
Absolutely.
Darren, this brings us to the end of our series on conversations. We hope you've had a chance to apply some of the things and will apply some of the things that will elevate your conversations. Remember, the conversation is the work. And as you said beautifully in one of the videos, wouldn't it be a great goal to elevate the quality of our conversations? And I think being a great conversationalist is certainly something that is a worthy and honorable pursuit. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.